Good morning, grade 4. How are you today? Today we have a reading lesson. We have a new story. Our new story is Moonwalk by Ben Bova and illustrated by Peter. Illustrator is the one who draws pictures for us. The genre for this week is science fiction. Science fiction. Let's see, what do I mean by science fiction? Science fiction, grade 4, usually sets in the near or distant future. So we are talking about the future. In the real world or world with the similar rules. So it could be in our world, we are talking about our world or something similar to our world. Often has spaceship, aliens, robots, time travel. So this is some of the features that we can find in our science fiction story. Let's see if we will find one in our story. Also, unreal things exist or happen because of the science, not magic. So we will talk about unreal things exist, and this unreal things exist because of science, not because of magic. Story that ask what if or what could be. So we will ask in our story what if or what could be. So this is science fiction story. We will talk about time in the future, and also we'll talk about the real world or something near to our real world. We will use spaceships, aliens, robots, time traveling like this, and unreal events that will happen in our story because of science, not because of magic. Okay.
Illustrated by Peter Bollinger. Genre: science fiction is a story based on science. It often tells about life in the future. As you read this story about a walk on the moon, look for the scientific information on which it is based. Question of the week: what are the risks when walking on the moon? Moonwalk.
So again, genre, we said science fiction. This story based on science. It often tells about life in the future. We will talk about the future. And they told you when you are reading this story, check the science information, scientific information. Now, let me ask you some questions before we start the story, the moonwalk. What is the moon's surface like? Did you imagine how the moon's surface looks like? The surface, the land there? And how do people move around on the moon? How do people move around on the moon? And why do people wear space suits when walking on the moon? Why do they wear special clothes? And this cloth we call it space suits when they are walking on the moon. We can say, class, that the moon's surface is dusty and rocky. Dusty and rocky. It has plains, valleys, and mountains. And because there is less gravity, gravity, than on Earth, people can leap around. So in our Earth, we have gravity. The gravity will allow us to be steady on the ground. We will not fly. But in moon, we have less gravity than the Earth. So people can leap around. There is no air on the moon. And this is why they wear space suits, to provide them with oxygen so people can breathe. Also, the suit will protect them from the extreme hot and cold temperature on the moon. This is why they are wearing the space suit. So let's start the story. Please follow.
Bet you can't jump over that rill, Runt, Vern challenged. Jerry Kendall hated it when his older brother called him Runt. Watch me, Runt, Vern taunted. I'll show you how to do it. Inside his hard-shell moonsuit, with its big backpack and astronaut-type helmet, Jerry watched as Vern got a running start, kicking up lazy puffs of dust with each step. He sailed over the crooked crack in the ground, floating like a cloud until he touched down on the other side. The boys were out on the floor of the giant crater Alphonsus. Their father had brought them along with him to the half-buried shelter 15 miles from the main base. Dad had left them at the shelter and gone off with the tractor to inspect the new telescope that was being built still farther out on the crater floor. Dad had told them to stay inside the shelter until he came back. But Vern wanted to go outside for a moonwalk. Now he was jumping over gullies in the bare, dark ground. "Come on, Runt," Vern called from the other side of the rill. "Let's see you do it." Jerry glanced at the thermometer on the wrist of his moonsuit. It was 214 degrees below zero, yet he was sweating inside his suit. "What's the matter? You scared?" Even though it was nighttime, it wasn't really dark. A big blue and white earth hung in the starry sky, shining beautifully. Jerry could see the rough, uneven ground, the rocks and boulders scattered everywhere on the moon's surface. And the rill, a wide, meandering crack in the ground. "Well?" Vern demanded. In the moon's light gravity, Jerry weighed only about 30 pounds, even with his bulky moonsuit. "Okay," he said into his microphone. "Here I come." He took 4 running steps, then soared over the rill. It felt like flying. He stumbled when he landed, though. Vern grabbed him and kept him from falling. "Not bad for a runt," Vern said, laughing. "Now let's find a really big one."
Okay, I'll let you hear it again one more time. If you didn't hear it, who's asking me, you can, Rimas, you are saying that you didn't hear anything. Please make it louder. You can make it louder from your own computer. Try to make it louder or put speakers. Okay, again.
"Bet you can't jump over that rill, Runt," Vern challenged. Jerry Kendall hated it when his older brother called him Runt. "Watch me, Runt," Vern taunted. "I'll show you how to do it." Inside his hard-shell moonsuit, with its big backpack and astronaut-type helmet, Jerry watched as Vern got a running start, kicking up lazy puffs of dust with each step. He sailed over the crooked crack in the ground, floating like a cloud until he touched down on the other side. The boys were out on the floor of the giant crater Alphonsus. Their father had brought them along with him to the half-buried shelter 15 miles from the main base. Dad had left them at the shelter and gone off with the tractor to inspect the new telescope that was being built still farther out on the crater floor. Dad had told them to stay inside the shelter until he came back. But Vern wanted to go outside for a moonwalk. Now he was jumping over gullies in the bare, dark ground. "Come on, Runt," Vern called from the other side of the rill. "Let's see you do it." Jerry glanced at the thermometer on the wrist of his moonsuit. It was 214 degrees below zero, yet he was sweating inside his suit. What's the matter? You scared? Even though it was nighttime, it wasn't really dark. A big blue and white earth hung in the starry sky, shining beautifully. Jerry could see the rough, uneven ground, the rocks and boulders scattered everywhere on the moon's surface. And the rill, a wide, meandering crack in the ground. Well, Vern demanded. In the moon's light gravity, Jerry weighed only about 30 pounds, even with his bulky moon suit. Okay, he said into his microphone. Here I come. He took 4 running steps, then soared over the rill. It felt like flying. He stumbled when he landed, though. Vern grabbed him and kept him from falling. Not bad for a runt, Vern said, laughing. Now let's find a really big one.
Okay, class. Now, can you tell me who are the characters in our story? The characters in our story are Vern and Gary, right?
Jerry Kendall.
Sorry. So, Vern and Jerry. And Vern, he was calling Jerry Runt. Now, remember what is Runt, class? Runt, small and weak. So, he's calling his brother weak. Also, one of the vocab that we have here, rill. What do I mean by rill? Remember? Rill, he's saying to his brother, jump over that rill. Here we have a narrow valley. So this is rill. The third vocab that we have, that we took together, taunted. Vern taunted. What do I mean by Vern taunted? Vern taunted, it means he mocked his brother. He was making fun of him. So this is the meaning of taunted. Okay, let me ask another question. The setting of our story, where is the setting of our story? Can you mention? Yes, the setting of our story is on the moon, What had Dad told the boys? What did the dad told the boys to not do? And did they obey? Actually, the dad, he told them to stay inside the shelter, but did they listen to him? Vern wanted to go for a moonwalk, so they are disobeying their dad by being outside, right? This is what happened. If we want to talk about Vern, and his character from the things he says and does, if we want to talk about his character, about what he did in the story now, and the things he's saying, how you can describe his character, class? We can say that Vern is a risky taker because he wants to go outside without listening to his dad. And also a rule breaker. He's breaking the rules, right? By ignoring his father's order to stay inside and goes out looking for adventure. How come he wants to go outside to look for adventure and his father asked them, or we can say he ordered them to stay inside? So he wants to find an adventure on the surface of the moon. And we can say that he likes to taunt his brother. He likes to make fun of his brother the whole time. But he also likes his brother. He loves him. Okay, the last question that I will ask you related to these pages. This question is very important. Is the narrator of the story is first person, the narrator, the one who's telling the story? The narrator is a first person or third person? Narrator is first person or third person. And how I will know? Actually, class, the narrator of the story is the third person. You'll tell me, teacher, how did you know that he is the third person? Because the narrator who is not a character in the story, we call it the third person. If the narrator was one of the character, like he was Jerry or Vern, we will say that the narrator here is a first person. But the narrator here is not one of the characters. So we will say that the narrator is a third person. Okay, so a narrator who is not character in the story is telling us what is happening. Here we will say that he is a third person. How did I know? By using boys. He's mentioning boys. So he's not one of the boys. He's not one of the characters when he's mentioning the names of the boys. And also when he's using the pronoun he, also we can say that he's not one of the characters. So this is a third person narrator. Third person narrator, not first person narrator. Let's go to the next 2 pages. Okay, please pay attention.
We shouldn't be doing this, Jerry said. Dad told us to stay inside the shelter. If he finds out, who's going to tell him? Vern demanded. Nobody, I guess. That's right. We'll be back in the shelter by the time Dad gets back. And you'll keep your mouth shut, right? Right, Jerry said reluctantly. He followed Vern along the rill they had just crossed, their boots kicking up dust that settled slowly in the low gravity. They trudged along for nearly an hour, leaving boot prints in the dust. Off on the other side of the crater, sunlight was bathing the top of the Ringwall Mountains with harsh, brilliant light. It would soon be daytime. Hey, there's one, Vern called out, pointing with a gloved hand at a broad gully up ahead. It was much wider than the one they'd jumped across. It looked deep, too, like a trench. Bet you can't jump over that one, Runt. Jerry peered at the rill. It's pretty wide, he said. Scared? Jerry was, but he didn't want to admit it. He shook his head inside his helmet, then realized that Vern couldn't see it. Well, want me to go first? Summoning up his courage, Jerry said, Nah, I'll try it. Jerry backed up several paces, then started running. In the light gravity, every step was a leap. The edge of the rill loomed up like the rim of the Grand Canyon. Jerry jumped as hard as he could. He soared, sailing up and over the yawning trench, and landed almost perfectly. He hardly staggered. Turning to look back across the rill at Vern, he called, Nothing to it. Piece of cake. Okay, Vern answered. Here I come. Vern started running, each stride a long hop across the uneven ground. With his last step, though, he stumbled on a small rock. When he took off for the jump across, Jerry saw that he wasn't going to make it. Watch out! He yelled uselessly. Vern soared, arms and legs flailing, and landed hard, just short of the rill's rim. Jerry heard him go, oof, as he hit the side of the rift and tumbled down out of sight. Jerry rushed to the edge of the gully and saw his brother halfway down the rill, lying motionless.
Okay, grade 4. Now the 2 boys, they had started their adventure, and they found a gully or a valley, and here something happened. Let's see. Let me ask you this question. How did Jerry feeling changed after he jumped over the rill and landed safely? What evidence in the text led you to that conclusion? If you want to talk about how he landed safely, we can say that when Jerry saw how wide the rill was, he was scared to jump. So at the beginning, he was scared. But what happened next? He felt relieved and proud of himself when he did it, when he landed safely. And he was telling his brother that it was a piece of cake. Now, if I ask you, what is trench? What do I mean by trench? Again, here, what is trench? The meaning of trench is ditch. And the meaning of summoning, to call your courage, collect. And loom, to show, staggered, unsteady. So if you want to summarize those two pages, how we will summarize those two pages? We can say that two brothers go out for a walk on the moon against their dad's order. Vern jumped over a rill and taunted Gary to follow. So he jumped over the rill and taunted Jerry to follow. Jerry makes to across safely. They continue on until they come to a broad valley. Gary summons his courage and make it across. Now Vern, he want to jump. Vern stumbled and lands on the side of the rift, hurting himself in the fall. So Jerry, he could jump safely, but what happened that Vern, he hurt himself, and now they are in a big problem. Let's see what happened next.
Vern, you okay? No answer. He's hurt, Jerry thought. Maybe he's dead. Jerry scrambled down into the gully. Vern was lying on his back, one leg bent under him, arms sprawled. Vern, he called again as he slid and scraped down the side of the rill. Vern moved one hand, then waved feebly. He's alive, Jerry thought. He's conscious. He dropped to his knees at his brother's side. Are you okay? Can you get up? Vern didn't answer. He tapped one hand against his helmet. His radio's out, Jerry understood. With no air on the moon to carry sound, the only way to talk was through the suit radios. Unless they could touch helmets. He leaned over and pressed his helmet against Vern's. Can you hear me now? No electricity in my suit. No air fans, no radio, nothing. You must have banged up your backpack, Jerry said. Knocked the battery loose or something. I won't have any air to breathe. Vern sounded scared. Without electricity, the moon suit's air circulation pumps couldn't work. Neither could the radio or any of the suit's other equipment. Jerry tried to keep calm. There's enough air inside the suit for a couple of hours, I think. Yeah, Vern said, his voice shaky. Maybe.
So class, Vern has fallen into the rill. He fall in the rill. What does Jerry think? Vern doesn't answer his call. Why, Jerry? Why Vern, he didn't answer his call? He thought that his brother is hurt or maybe dead. So this is why he didn't answer him. How you can tell that Jerry and Vern, they are in a very dangerous situation? And what conclusion you can draw? How did you know? We can say that Vern has known electricity in his suit. So Vern has no electricity in his suit. That means his radio won't work. He can't communicate with anyone. So it's hard for him to hear and talk Jerry. And we can also say that's one of the dangerous situations that they are in now. He doesn't have air. So how he can breathe? Few hours and maybe he will die because there is no air in his suit. So what do you think will happen next phase? Do you think they can make it and go back to the shelter, or they will die in the while they are making their adventure? Think about this question. So we can say also that Vern and Jerry have gotten themselves into a risky situation by ignoring their father's order. This is what we took in our story until now. We will complete, inshallah, let me repeat my question again. What feature of moonwalk show that is a work of science fiction? You think that there is no
gravity.
No gravity. What else?
And also that they are wearing astronaut suits and they are
Perfect.
and something that
Yes. Oh, and they are living where?
and they are living on the earth. But now they don't.
No, they are living on the moon.
How?
Yes, the setting of the story where? On Earth or on moon?
On the moon, but they live on the earth, but they came to the moon.
They didn't mention that they are living on Earth. They mentioned for us that they are now on the moon. Okay.
That's interesting.
Can we go, teacher?
No, not yet. Let me ask you a question. Vern, sometimes he was calling his brother Runt instead of using his real name. Why do you think Vern does this? Why he was mocking his brother the whole
Because
time?
he was telling him that he was weak, that he is weak.
Yeah, and
Because his brother is weak. What else? Usually, who's mocking between the brothers and sisters? Who will mock the other part of the family, the older or the younger? Do you think
Older.
So who's the older and who's the younger character?
Jerry is the older and Vern is the younger. Is that right?
You mean the opposite. Jerry is the younger, right?
Yes.
Jerry is the younger and Vern
But
is
who's
the...
Jerry and who's Vern? Who's Vern?
Sorry?
Who's Vern?
Vern, his brother.
Where? Blue suit or yellow suit?
I'm not sure. Yes, this is a good question, ya Rimas. Look at the picture. Who do you think is Jerry and who do you think is real? Is
The green suit. And the green suit and Jerry the blue suit.
So one minute. Who with the yellow suit? What do we call him? Who's he?
Jerry.
Jerry, are you sure?
Yes, Vern.
But the one who got hurt is Vern, not Jerry.
I think the blue one is Jerry.
The yellow suit is Vern, the one who didn't listen to his dad and he wants to make...
suit is the big one and the blue suit is the yellow, the smallest one.
So listen to me. The one who got hurt is Vern. Vern is with the yellow suit. Jerry is the one with the blue suit. The one who's
I know who's older.
Teacher, the period finish.
Okay, class. See you tomorrow, inshallah. Read what...
Jerry is older than Vern. Jerry is older than Vern.
No, Vern is older.
How?
Yes, read the story again. See you tomorrow, class. Okay?
Teacher, we have another period.
No, we don't have. Okay, see you tomorrow. Bye, grade 4.
Bye.